Shock jocks. First, Don Imus was fired over his racist and sexist remarks. Now, a month later, 2 more shock jocks are under fire for a phone prank that offended the Asian American community. Tonight, we're taking a look at all sides of the political correctness spectrum.
You are a very nice Chinese man.
Thank you.
Probably can't drive for but who cares?
These offensive remarks first put radio shock jocks JV and Elvis into the doghouse, which also happened to be the name of their show. Now they're off the air altogether. CBS fired the 2 hosts, Jeff Vandergrift and Dan Lay, whose antics can be seen on YouTube. This comes after a nearly 3-week-long suspension following this prank phone call to a Chinese restaurant that aired on their program.
I need shrimp, fried, rice.
Okay, large order or small?
Very large. Shrimp, fried, rice.
Okay.
Right, with ethnic and sexual slurs, the 6-minute call was broadcast on CBS-owned New York radio station WFNY.
I have very good kung fu skills.
It first aired in early April, the day after Don Imus made his controversial remarks, and then it was aired again a week after Imus was fired.
It was a slap in the face. It was a slap in the face to the Asian community that they felt that this was aired the first time, ha ha ha, let's do it again, we'll get even more laughs and see what happens. It was very offensive that they kept perpetuating these type of stereotypes.
The Asian American community was outraged and publicly called for their dismissal.
We're getting somewhere here, so definitely we're happy. We're very happy.
But some are angered by the firings and view the punishment as censorship.
To have somebody fired from the airwaves because they made what essentially comes out to a pee-pee joke that every second grader in the country is making is absolutely absurd. People need to get a thicker skin.
Condoleezza Rice. I love the
Less than a week ago, XM Satellite Radio's Opie and Anthony spoke on air with a guest they call Homeless Charlie about violent sexual acts against Condoleezza Rice and Laura Bush, later posted online.
And George Bush's wife? Oh, yeah.
Opie and Anthony have since publicly apologized.
We apologize to the public officials for comments that were made on the XM show.
Do we want to live in a society where everybody has to think through whether everything they're going to say might offend somebody somewhere? I'm not sure if that would really make for entertaining radio.
Entertaining or not, radio shock jocks are now, it seems, subject to closer scrutiny than ever before. And late today, XM Radio released the following statement because they have decided to suspend the Opie and Anthony show for 30 days. Here's the statement, quote, "The management of XM Radio decided to suspend Opie and Anthony to make clear that our on-air talent must take seriously the responsibility that creative freedom requires of them."
But tonight, ShowBiz Tonight is asking just where do we draw the line when it comes to that creative freedom? Should these shock jocks be silenced, or are we in fact crossing the line into censorship? With me tonight in New York, community activist and radio host, the Reverend Al Sharpton. He led the campaign to get Don Imus fired. Also from New York, Debbie Wolf. You just saw her in our story. She's the president of People Against Censorship. Al, Debbie, it is good to have you both here. And Al, let me start with you, because in the case of Opie and Anthony, we certainly can all agree that what happened on their show that we just showed you was reprehensible, it was offensive, it was disgusting, and as we reported, XM Radio has now suspended those guys for 30 days. What do you think, Al? Is that enough in their case, or should they be fired as well, like Don Imus?
Well, I think that, see, a lot of this you've got to remember is about, all of it really is about advertising dollars. I think advertisers have the right to say that they do not want to put their money behind large segments of their consumer base being offended, particularly when people say to them they are. And in the case of the show that you just mentioned on XM, with them trying to get a merger, they have to go to Washington to get that. I think that these cases are different than Imus. Imus was a repeat offender that stood out in a different situation.
Well, I understand, Al. You know, you're talking here about corporate responsibility and letting the marketplace sort of dictate what happens to these people, but you did lead a charge for Imus to be fired. So
I led a charge for Imus to be fired because Imus had made a commitment several times that he would stop these racist jokes, and he didn't. And eventually his advertising bosses agreed with that. If he did not himself feel they were over the line, he wouldn't have made those apologies. So Imus situation cannot be compared to others' arguments that Debbie may want to make about free speech. Here's a guy who admitted himself and committed that he would stop doing it and kept doing it.
Debbie, I do feel like we're on this slippery slope. I mean, you did say yourself in our story that people do need to develop a thicker skin.
We're not on a slippery slope. We're on a mountain, and we're going down at full speed here. I think Reverend Al is missing the point that you're chilling speech here. When you fire someone for a brief remark that was said very quickly, and in this case, not even by the jocks, but by someone who just happened to be visiting the studio who they had no control over, you're saying people can't speak freely anymore. They have to watch everything they say for fear that they are going to be fired based on a 30-second soundbite.
No, what I'm saying is that if people are going to say things that offend people based on who they are, then people have the right to say, if you're going to make money off of who I am and not respect who I am, I'm going to withdraw my money. That's what we said to the people at Imus. You have the right to say whatever you want. You don't have the right to expect me to pay for it. Then what happens to my right? And I think that that is clearly where we have to draw the line here. When you want free speech, well, we have the right to speak back and say, fine, that's what you're going to do. You won't do it with my dollar. And advertisers have the right to say, I'm not going to support that.
Well, Al, if you don't interfere with that right, that's just fine. But when you lead a charge, when you demand a firing, when you're saying to the companies that if you don't fire this person, there are going to be repercussions and I'm going to use my power to come after you, then you've got a different story.
Well, but then how does that go beyond Al's right to free speech?
That's correct.
We actually, Al, no, absolutely not. We are defending your right. My organization actually defends your right. You will not see our member base go to your sponsors to seek to have you taken off the air. We will instead have a voice that we counter you with.
But what you're saying is that if I use my voice to say that I'm offended at someone calling people, as Imus did, racial terms, that I should have the right to say that.
Absolutely not. For you to get on the news and say that you're offended is absolutely your right, and that's exactly what you should do.
But
when you're offended, when you're offended, you should get angry.
So
I'm asking, let me finish. Let me finish.
Hold on a second.
I'm just asking
Debbie,
you.
I want you to finish.
I'm just asking you to exercise some social responsibility. For 200 years, some of the smartest men in the world have made the decision that free speech is a good thing, at least, and our government isn't allowed to interfere with that free speech. And that's even when that speech may be offensive, and even when that speech may be harmful to some people's feelings or to some people's beliefs. But those people have decided that that speech should be protected anyway. You seem to think you know better than those people. You seem to think that that doesn't matter.
Not at all. First of all, you're saying I have the right to free speech, just don't exercise your right to free assembly and your right to organize against those that I'm patronizing. And I think that you or anyone else doesn't have the right to decide which freedoms that I can exercise.
No, you can organize.
I let you finish, Debbie. I let you finish. What you said, and I quote, you just said, don't go and organize, don't go and lead charges to these corporations, which is to deny my right to organize and move forward against companies and say, I don't want my dollar spent.
I just said to use some social responsibility and think of the consequences of your actions.
And the consequences
are that you have to realize that one of the consequences are that people are going to be afraid to speak their mind. Another consequence is that we are going to lose, at least on radio and possibly everywhere else now, the ability to say what we think. And you know what, if you're concerned about racism, you can't fight racism if you can't hear it.
The consequence is that people cannot just get up and arbitrarily blast people according to their race agenda. That's the consequence. Because people then in that race agenda have the right to say, I'm not going to support those that subsidize them.
All right, hold on a second. Let me ask you something. Let me stop right here, because we could go on about this for a long time. But Al, one of the things that keeps coming up is, where does that line get drawn? At which point, talk about repeat offenders, calling Imus a repeat offender. You look at a guy like Rush Limbaugh, okay? He has certainly said things and then later apologized for them. He talks about Barack Obama on his show all the time. He has referred to that man as a Hafrican. He has played a song called Barack the Magic Negro. On surface, I find that offensive. A lot of people find that offensive, but the outrage over that paled in comparison. Where do you draw the line to decide who you go after?
Because Mr. Lombard has done years of stuff against me, now Obama, others. He has the right to do that with individuals. That is not what we're talking about when you castigate a race or a gender. And he's very, very careful that he will hit individuals. I think he wanted us to come after that. I talked to Senator Obama. He wanted us to come after that.
Hold on a second, Al. I got to
stop.
stop you there simply because I'm out of time. We will continue this discussion, though. Reverend Al Sharpton, the president of People Against Censorship, Debbie Wolf, I thank you both for joining us.
All right.
Well, Brooke, we all remember what Paris Hilton was put on the map for.